Our very special guest, ZB Stevenson from InTown Golf. We're really excited to have him on today to talk all things inventory. He's been a power user of meez for some time now, and we wanted to really have a discussion from someone who really knows what they're talking about on the ground floor when it comes to inventory. So we thought you'd really appreciate having a perspective of someone on, kind of where you're sitting, someone who's actually using this in while also managing tons of people and product and P&Ls and all kinds of stuff. Um, in light of that, I'm going to kick it over to Nicole just for some kind of housekeeping stuff around the chat and webinar. So, Nicole, take it away.
Thank you, Doug. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. This is Real Inventory Wins, how InTown Golf Club uses meez. So as Doug mentioned, my name's Nicole. I'm one of the customer success managers here at meez. I'm tuning in from sunny San Luis Obispo, California. So if you are participating here with us today, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. If you want to just type it in the chat, say where you're calling in from. And yeah, so we're here with Doug and also Sergio, who will be joining us, I'm sure, momentarily. He's having some technical issues. So both are also customer success managers here at meez. And this is part of our webinar series to really help with understanding best practices with the meez tools. And we are very lucky to have a special guest today, Chef ZB Stevenson from InTown Golf Club. So thank you so much for joining us, Zeb. Just a quick few housekeeping items. So there is the chat function. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat at any time. We'll do our best to get to answering those. And there's also the hand raising function as well. But just go ahead and use that chat feature, and we will get to those questions. Here is Sergio. He's just joined back in. Great.
Looks like I'm back.
Yeah, no, we don't need you anymore. You can go.
You don't need me anymore? All right.
No. Yes. So Sergio, getting your bearings for a minute, but in the meantime, why don't I go ahead and introduce Zeb. Zeb, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself as well, but Zeb's been working with meez for probably a couple of years now, I'd say, and brought on inventory at his first InTown Golf Club location. And then from there on to now we're at, I believe, 5. He's been just basically opening new locations all over the country and implementing meez as he's going, along with other systems and just in general, doing a great job kind of with all of these openings and implementation as he goes. So it's a really complex role, and we thought it'd be really great to have someone from his perspective talk to you guys about what he's doing, what's successful for him, what's not, and what's basically kind of tips and tricks and pitfalls and things like that. From the source. So, Zeb, would you like to do your own little introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. First off, thanks for having me. And thanks everybody for attending. I think Doug may have oversold me by saying I know what I'm doing, but we're piecing it together pretty well. I'm Zeb Stevenson. I'm the Culinary Director for InTown Golf Club. We are a private social club that features indoor golf simulators. And we're based out of Atlanta, Georgia. We currently have locations in Atlanta, Charlotte, North Carolina, Dublin, Ohio, Philadelphia. I'm leaving tomorrow to open our Nashville, Tennessee location, and we will have Houston, Texas online in October of this month with what could be described as a pretty aggressive growth plan from there. So I brought on meez as soon as I took the role. Which was about 2 years ago, and have been systematically expanding the base of knowledge with my teams, and still have a ways to go, but we have really made some impressive strides with using meez. I'm a big fan, big believer. So in that respect, I'm here to help answer questions or kind of lay out what we've had success with at InTown Golf Club.
Awesome.
That's awesome, Chef. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I remember connecting a couple years ago when you were first getting started, getting ready to open the first location. And you've definitely had a clear plan, vision. I'm sure you've been thrown more curveballs than I could even imagine through the process. But yeah, what we see on our end is you've been pretty systematic about it. And every couple of months, we know that we're waiting to hear from you that you got the next place ready to go online. We set up, we get your account set up, and next thing we know, the end of the month is coming up and you're doing inventory. So, couple things that I want to hear about is, I guess, before opening InTown Golf, at some of your previous jobs throughout your career, what was the inventory process like? Were you using different software? Were you using Excel? Were you using pen and paper all along? Or, there's kind of an evolution usually before somebody goes all digital. We'd love to hear what your journey was like.
Sure. And I may be dating myself, but I'm old school. I started cooking in 1997. So I've seen everything from pen and paper inventory to Excel spreadsheets. And Excel spreadsheets are really where I landed for most of my career. So in my time as an executive chef, over 5 different restaurants, we always used an Excel spreadsheet inventory. And when I landed at InTown Golf Club, to clarify, when I arrived at InTown Golf Club, they had 2 locations open. The Charlotte location had just opened a few months before. So I kind of came in the midst of it and was tasked with getting my hands around the back of house systems. At the time, they were using an Excel spreadsheet inventory. And I could tell pretty quickly, given the known growth trajectory, that that was only going to make my job as a director much, much more difficult. So that's well, actually, I came on with Meez originally as just a recipe book format, if you recall.
Yeah. Yep.
And solidified that, really got my teams accustomed to that. Started recipe building and then building plate up recipes and tracking food costs in real time. And so the inventory module was a natural next step.
Yep. It's funny you say how long you've been doing this in spreadsheets. I got about 10 years on you, so we were using abacuses, I guess, before you were using spreadsheets. But curious too, like then how you think, what are your when you say I knew right away that spreadsheet with the growth trajectory would make my life harder rather than simpler. What are the pitfalls of having a spreadsheet and inventory that made you think that right away?
There were 2 primary drivers there. Number one is the functionality on the chef side. I noticed very, very early on that the simple process of counting the inventory was taking my chefs hours. And it was taking that long because they were arranging their inventories by item groups rather than in any kind of shelf to sheet format. And so it was just wildly inefficient. They're running all over the place.
Mhm.
And I too have time demands. So, I have end of month reports that are required of me. And so any delays on the chef's end from inefficiencies translate into inefficiencies for me, and it all kind of piles up down the line. The second part was that using Excel spreadsheets, even the best of us at it, and I got pretty good at it in my career, but it required me to spend, X amount of time during the month, especially in the week leading up to monthly inventory, affecting inventory price changes. And so that was a manual process. Me and my invoices, my 30 days worth of invoices sitting down. Okay, 15 dozen case eggs is now this. At the beginning of the month, it was this. And it's line by line by line by line, adding new items, subtracting dead stock, etc. And so when I say it was going to make my life more difficult or my job more difficult, managing this many locations with this many unique products and trying to keep my hands around an accurate inventory, I can see that doing it manually was going to take more time, have us prone to inaccuracies that were going to lead up to, that were going to lead to inaccurate reporting and cost of goods. And just the sheer spending time back and forth on the phone with the chefs. Did you check this? Did you check that? It really felt unsustainable.
Yeah. And how was that spreadsheet kept up to date as far as cost? Was that also manual, plugging cost into the spreadsheet? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a manual process. It was ownership of it was on the executive chef at each location. So I would prepare, I would make a copy of their previous month's inventory, blank everything out, send an updated copy to them, in the middle of the month and say, here you go. Now it's time for you to get into the sheet and affect your price and your price changes. Being remote, and that's an important thing to consider with my role too. I don't work for a restaurant group that has all its locations in Atlanta. My locations are hundreds of miles away. So my ability to go there and check in on them and micromanage or be over their shoulders out the window. So I have to trust that they're affecting their price changes. And you do that kind of knowing that it's not as accurate or as thorough. So
Yeah.
I'd love to like ask on that because from someone from your perspective, like you're okay, you have to manage people hundreds of miles away. You have to also implement systems that they're going to use. Like, what was I think everybody deals with this on a more of a micro basis, right? You still have to manage the change of bringing on a new system, of replacing something that's maybe easy to use, but it's not that functional, like like a spreadsheet. So, I mean, just like I guess in terms of like how you planned that out, or maybe if you didn't plan it out, just how it ended up happening. But like, how did you end up successfully kind of, I don't know, figuring out how to, I guess we call that change management, right? Like how to like really manage the change that you're, bringing on somebody. Hey, this is a new system. We want you to use this, and you're not even really there to like necessarily make sure it's used properly. Like, tell me a little bit about that process.
yeah, we because we started with meez in a limited capacity. Again, like I mentioned, when I brought meez on, I presented to my chefs as one thing and one thing only. We're going to use it as a recipe book so that we can clean up or eliminate the raggedy looking, beat up folder with, all the pages hanging out of it. We're just going to have a recipe book. And that's all we focused on for 4 or 5 months. And as they became more accustomed to using the system, they trusted it more. They start to understand how it works. And so my strategy was, like I said, to kind of increase the sphere of knowledge or usability. So I didn't jump straight into inventory. Inventory was an add-on. It was a thing that I could present to them as if to say, hey, we all know how to use meez now. We know what it does.
Yeah.
It's capable of even more than that. And here's how we're going to do it. The other thing that I did was I beta tested it in a single location before rolling it out to the rest. I think that was a really important step. That gave us the ability, first of all, it gave me the ability to learn how to use it. And we had a lot of training, you remember, but there's nothing like getting on the ground and using it. And I made plenty of mistakes, and had to go back and learn new things and figure out kind of tips and tricks and hacks with y'all's help. But keeping it sequestered to one location gave me the confidence and gave the chefs the confidence in how to use it so that I could introduce it sequentially to the other locations. So now we're caught up in all of our locations, and when we open a new one, like I'm getting ready to do here shortly, it's fantastic because all of their product that they order now comes through meez. So I don't have to chase down any legacy product. It's just part of what we do now. But I think that strategy is what really helped get it off the ground.
Got it. Yeah. So like, would you say that's, I mean, I'm not actually sure I can't remember the other systems you're using, but would you say, like, I'm assuming you suggest that regardless of the system you're using is just like, tested in one location, tested in a more controlled environment, and I guess just letting it
Correct.
go and opening it up to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, for example, we beta tested we beta tested a resi, I'm sorry, my brain's escaping me right now, but we beta test that in one location to see if it works for us before rolling it out to different locations. So that's really our strategy company wide. We're playing a long game here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, any other advice, I guess, in terms of like, one thing that I noticed when you were when we were working together was that you introduced me to one of your team members who was Charles, I think, who's a real like champion of like this kind of stuff and knew what they were doing. So I guess maybe it was pretty obvious to you, but were there any was there a process around finding the right person to kind of like, spearhead this in terms of the bringing it on at a new location?
Yeah, I mean, each one of my chefs is special, and every one of them has I value them a lot, and they're all different from each other, and some are more geared towards this and some are more geared towards that. And so as I kind of looked at the panel, I was able to recognize the fact that Charles he's wired that way. He understands systems. He's kind of that generation, and he just has that kind of brain. And so it was easy for me to say, well, this is a guy who thinks very logically, is very patient, and is a good teacher. And so when you combine those three things together, I said, well, this is a guy that I can assign as my kind of meez guru, or my second in command. And so to this day, he helps me not only maintain the system, but he can provide training to the other chefs as well, if/when, I'm tied up with a new opening or some other of the million things that can pop up in my role.
Yeah.
That brings up a good question. When you go to open the new location, are you the only kind of senior member, or do you bring or is there an opening team? Is Charles on that team, or other people that kind of already know your playbook to help implement?
Yes, kinda, not so much, all in the same breath. So
Yeah.
because we're growing so quickly, we have to pull our resources or pull from other locations in a very calculated way. Charles has been with me for, well, of course, his location, then he helped me open Philadelphia. But he's not available for Nashville. So to answer your question in a few steps, number one, yes, we pull people from the different locations, whether that's back of house, front of house, bar team, host stand, golf services, which are all active departments of an InTown Golf Club. But it's not always the same person, but it's always somebody senior, somebody who is on our what we call our hypo list, which is our list of high potential employees. So those are the people that we know we can count on. We're developing them for bigger roles. It won't be long until we have a dedicated training team, and that's something that we talk about, as senior management here often.
Nice. Yeah, I always find it really interesting though, like the balancing act of like you don't want to let this go out to just everybody and let the kind of potentially a lot of different people like getting into the app when it hasn't been kind of readied for that. But at the same time, you have to bring in some because you can't, just one person doing it is not really sustainable. So it's a really interesting kind of balancing act, I feel like, to find the right people and then expand slowly, get the right people, expand slowly, get the right people, and doing it very methodically so you can, just lay that foundation. So
Yeah. Ultimately, we have to know our people. We have to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and use them in the right directions, for me's and everything else.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I think I'd like to start maybe a good time to jump into showing the actual like how it's set up for Zeb in different ways. Because I think what we'll illustrate here is that each of these locations is different. They're different cities, different personnel, and therefore you want to reflect the inventory. You want to make the inventory reflect the reality of that. Does that sound
Sure.
good?
Yeah. And the menus are 60% static across all locations, but that leaves a pretty large section of the menu and product associated with it that varies from location to location too. So it's got to work for them.
Yeah. And yeah, like so this is an example of Columbus, I think one of the more like nitty-gritty, let's say, lists or sheets. So for those who are familiar with the inventory, this might sound kind of redundant, but for those who are maybe not 100% familiar, so when you're in Meez and you have multiple locations, or any of your locations will be listed in your drop down at the top here. So each of these locations can have their own lists, right? So and people set them up however they want, but it makes in our mind the most sense to set this up from as a shelf to sheet style inventory. So you name the sheet kind of by a geographic location, and then within that you have the items in there. So yeah, Zeb, any kind of I guess just discussion about kind of how this was set up, whose brainchild this was? Did this go through different iterations? Was this fairly straightforward and easy to kind of set up? Tell us a little bit about this process.
Sure. So Columbus is Charles's location, as evidenced by the level of detail or granularity from his count sheets. You can see that he breaks it down not just dry shelf one, but he breaks it down to individual shelves. So 1.1 is the top shelf and down, so on and so forth. That gives him the ability to stay on top of his product locations, and he prefers to have fewer items per count sheet. If we scroll to some of the other locations, go to Atlanta, you can see like dry storage downstairs has 53 items. Charles finds that very confusing. And so he likes to break it down by shelf so that he has fewer items within the count sheet, which I think is really smart. I let the shelves do it in a way that works for them, and each one has found a way that works for them and it's accurate. And so they feel like they have some agency over the process. But with that said, there are a number of different ways to do this, as you can see here. Some might argue that breaking it down to individual shelves may feel a little cumbersome. But again, it works for him. He gives me accurate inventories. He's able to count his inventories quickly. He and his sous chefs can get it done in hour and a half. So I'm on board.
Yeah, you're letting the people kind of tell you what they need, right? You're letting the
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's got to work for them. They're going to resist change, period. Everybody's going to. And so we have to manage the change. And so what I found is that kind of picking the battles, giving them some agency over the process, makes it feel like I'm not micromanaging them. So you have to set up yourselves this way. And each one of our kitchens are different too. They all occupy different spaces with different dimensions and different shelf configurations. It's not a cookie cutter, freestanding, chain restaurant. So we have to be able to have some flexibility in how it's put together.
When you were like setting this up, or when Charles or whoever else was setting it up, were they literally walking around with like a tablet and like adding stuff, like putting in the sheets and adding stuff as they went? Were they, do you know what that process was like?
Yeah, because I set up Atlanta, Charlotte, excuse me. Charles set up his own location. I set up Philadelphia. I'll be setting up Nashville along with the chef there. And we grab the iPad and just go straight to the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Once we've determined where everything lives, which, when you're opening a new kitchen, there's a little bit of flux period there. But no, we just walked straight with the iPad and just name the count sheet, add new items, check the count unit of measure, and just keep it moving.
Got it. Yeah. And we won't miss, I don't know if we want to go into the count unit of measure thing. For those who were here last one, I think we did a pretty in-depth discussion about count units and how to set those up so that it's kind of optimized. So I think folks who are interested in that would check out the previous webinar, or we can send out the link to that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about that, obviously, and it's still the number one error that we get, but there's a big but there. Because I can pull the analytics before the final submission, I can filter those out and spot them very, very quickly. And I just screen grab them, email them to the chefs and say, correct, please, and let me know when you're done.
Yep. Gorgeous. Beautiful. Well, obviously, if anyone has any questions about this process, feel free to chat it in there. We'll have time for questions at the end too, though. Maybe I'll kick it back to Sergio. Is that a good time for the next?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were describing that, I guess, I'm kind of just wanting to visualize your process. And like you said, it's going to be a little bit different at each location. So if you can walk me through, like, you're starting to think about inventory time. What time of month is that when you start thinking about inventory time? Is it like around the 15th, 16th, like get in the teens? Or for me, I know it used to be like when I hit 20 on my monthly inventory. I was like, oh, it's a 20th. That means I have 10 days or 11 days to make sure these inventory sheets are ready. And 2 weeks ago, I shared what my process used to be. There was 3 different computers. Each different laptop had like different columns in it and stuff. This was going back way back. But yeah, so it was quite a process. And I'm curious to hear from you, like, on a typical month, and how you start emailing the chefs at each one. Hey, just reminding you, inventory's coming up. Start dusting them off, kind of yada yada. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I start thinking about inventory on the 2nd. So once I finish preparing my end of month reports, I submit my end of month reports up the chain to finance and to my boss in the spreadsheet format. So I take the data that meez has calculated. I actually I import the count by item. I'm sorry, no, count by count sheet spreadsheet. I export out of there, use that to derive the final numbers. There are other things that go into it. There are a couple other tabs. The chefs have employee meal credits that they calculate, and they populate a separate reimbursements. All that said to say, I make a copy, blank that document out, and send it to them on the 2nd. Now, it'll be about the 15th, right in the middle of the month, when I shoot them a little reminder. Hey, gang, just remember, we're halfway through the month. You no doubt have product that you've brought in for specials. You got things that are probably going to land on your inventory and adjustments to make. So now's a good time to start thinking about that. And it kind of gets them re-engaged right around the middle of the month.
Awesome. And so when they engage, then how have you instructed them to stay ahead of it? What are the processes for keeping the sheets up to date? Have you like instructed like, hey, if you decide to put a new item on, make sure that your inventory sheet's on the back of your mind so that when an inventory comes up, you don't go, oh God, new menu. That's right. There's 12 new items and they haven't made it on my sheets yet.
Yeah, a couple layers to that. Number one, I encourage the chefs to add every unique or new item that comes in the door. So they're running specials, multiple specials every week. They're no doubt ordering in new product. I encourage them to add it to their inventory incrementally as they go, even if they anticipate it not being there at the end of the month for the count. Much easier to delete that than it is to have to add it mid-count, which can be a struggle for some. And then we keep track of the new items in meez, and that helps me kind of keep a running tally on what's being added as well. So as we go into new items and we map those, that helps us all keep track, and I can keep the dialogue going with them. So for example, I was just in Philadelphia's and wrote down a couple of questions when I talked to Chef Jason after this call. Hey, by the way, I saw you received this, or this, have you added those to your inventory yet? And so I still participate a lot, but
Yeah.
I also enjoy participating a lot. So it keeps the dialogue going between me and the chefs. It keeps us all connected together.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a good answer to your question, but
No, it totally is, because you have oversight into all of it. So you're kind of like nudging. You see that they've launched a new menu and you see the new purchase items coming in, and you're just kind of nudging them with, hey, I saw the new items coming through. That's great. I hope your new menu launch was a success. Are those items on your inventory sheet, just to make sure that when the time comes, they And even if, like you said, they might not have launched the menu, but better to count that item as 0 than to have to add it mid-count, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We can always go back after the fact and delete out items that are irrelevant or aren't on inventory. And no doubt, look, it's bound to happen. They're going to catch things mid-count that they didn't add. And so we have to keep record of that because they need to add them during the count, but then they also need to go back and add them to the master sheet as well. So we're attacking it from a few different angles, I guess.
Yep. Yep. So it's inventory night at Atlanta, let's say. Who's doing the counting? What kind of devices? Do you just tell them to pull meez up on their phone? I know you have a tablet at each device. Do you have different people counting different sections? Just curious what your process is and what happens on inventory night.
So our sous chefs, and we have two sous chefs for each location. The sous chefs perform the counts, and then the counts are evaluated by the executive chef, who then alerts me that they've checked over. So I have a couple layers of accountability in there. One of them will grab the tablet, the other one will grab a laptop. And so the two sous chefs will split up and go do their things individually. Chef will check in with them, spot check them, and then take a look at the count sheets with them, and then hit submit and let me know. And then I'll take a look at the analytics.
Got it.
Yeah. Before doing the final push. Got it.
Yeah, I just think it's really, for us, it's really important to get the sous chefs involved in the process. Because again, when you're growing like we are, we got to keep developing people as much as possible and get them involved in any way we can.
Do those same sous chefs also do some of the ordering?
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the
I always thought that was key, that
split.
the people who actually purchased get involved in inventory, because I always felt like my job is, I was the owner, but I was also the main purchaser of my business. The week after inventory, I could do orders off the top of my head almost, because if you've been involved in the count, that makes it very easy for you. Like your job next week is like, oh, I pretty much know exactly what we have in stock of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, our PM sous chef is responsible for the produce order, which makes sense because they've got a later live time for orders. So PM sous chef counts the produce inventory. And so it keeps them connected with their product, with their duties.
Yeah. Question like that. I mean, it's just kind of unrelated to inventory, but I feel like it comes up a lot in discussions that where we talk about. I mean, obviously keeping good people is a huge problem, right? It's very hard to keep good people in this industry. But one thing we talk a lot about is like, you give people some level of responsibility, and connection to what's happening, and you're gonna have usually somebody who's a little more invested, right, in the process, in the company itself. And so I mean, I don't know if you have if this is something that you've looked into or at all, but do you feel like there's, and maybe this is for Sergio too, I mean, you've owned and hired tons of people too, like do you find that when you give people more responsibility in these kinds of areas, they are more, invested in their jobs and in staying, or do you feel like it's not really kind of correlated?
I certainly hope they are. I mean, no, what I've found that at least here at InTown Golf Club, we're the people that we put the most into as far as resources, we get the most out of, not only in the way of performance, but in the way of loyalty too. That's my whole strategy, is let's get them involved and they feel like they're a part of what's going on, and let them develop themselves in that respect. So I think there is a correlation. Yeah.
I like your word for it. High pro.
High potential.
High performing.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, that's a big.
Yeah, I would say I used to think about the same way, and that's why I was asking, like, people who were involved in inventory were people who were very much involved in purchasing. Now, my business was a hybrid of retail and kitchen prepared foods and retail gourmet. So there's a little bit of everything, but my managers did a lot of that purchasing. We had over 200 vendors at that store. So every manager had a list of vendors they worked with. And we tried to make it so that they were counting mostly things that were on their own order sheets. Because then that would always, like I said, either it made their next week really easy, or it brought things to light that in a big restaurant and big store can often be like, oh wow, I've over ordered on that product, obviously, and then I don't have to point it out to them. They did the count themselves and they realized that, ooh, I'm sitting on a whole extra case of that, and I'm surprised I haven't heard about it from Serge yet, but now I know that they're not going to order another case this next month or this next week or whatever. Cool. So, and then just curious, do you ever, or do you have any of your staff counting on phones on mobile? Is there a reason? Does it just look too small? Has it been?
I encourage them to use the tablet when at all possible because it's a larger screen, and I think
Then that's the answer, because Chef
the
says.
possibility for error is greater as we start to shrink things down.
Yep.
And maybe that's the Gen X in me coming out. I still have for recipe book usage, I have a lot of my team who will just use their phone for the recipe book, and I watch them do it. I'm like, you guys are out of your mind. Like, I don't even.
Yeah.
But maybe my aging eyes are part of that.
Same. And like when my wife watches TV on her phone, I just don't get it. I'm like, I cannot watch something on a screen that small. Cool.
Question here, Zeb. I don't know if you're comfortable with this, but someone was looking to see if they could see an example of the like analytics side of things.
Sure.
If I showed just like because we saw Columbus's count sheets, so you can see right here the count sheets are listed. When you submit this, if you select the location at the top here, wherever you're saying, you'll see the count sheet numbers right across the board, and so it's very easy to see count after count, kind of how things are going. And there are many ways to analyze these. You can filter this stuff pretty easily by any of the quality, what are these called?
Factors.
Data sets here, so that you can find potentially high items that are of the total value, or high items that you've in terms of the count quantity. So I just wanted to make sure for those who haven't really seen the inventory side of things, this is what it spits out at the end, that you can filter and export right from here. You can just look into by count sheet, or by scroll down by GL code, or by breakdown by item itself, so you can see the different items and all the data that goes along with them. So
yeah, what I find really helpful is I like to export it by count sheet and then throw it into Google Sheets, because I find the sorting capability is pretty robust at that point, and I can hit the I can find the zeros really quickly, and I can filter out things that were counted as zeros to find true items that are reporting to zero, and I can filter down from highest to lowest to find those count errors that are resulting in $10,000 worth of chicken that's clearly wrong, and I can spot that all pretty quickly.
Awesome. Yeah. Google may have a little leg up on us in terms of that.
That's all right.
Fair.
That's all right. We use the tools that are available to us.
That's why you can export.
So hopefully that was helpful. Obviously, for anybody who wants more information about like best practices around this stuff, if you are signed up for inventory, happy to send you some videos about that. And if you're not, happy to do a demo and kind of show you.
There was something I noticed in there. No, that's fine. I was just going to mention there was a count in there on in the middle of the month. This was on my mind. One thing that I've encouraged everybody to do for training purposes is just count an inventory. So recognizing the fact that the final numbers don't mean anything. They're not important until I digest them and put them in an end of month report. They're free to count inventory whenever they want. So as a training exercise, if we have a new sous chef, for example, which we had one start in Philadelphia recently, and he wanted to learn inventory, They had the chef just have him count an inventory, just count dry storage, and let's see how that lands because
Yeah.
you can do it as many times as you want, and it's good practice for them. So I had noticed Columbus had a mid-month count on 610 in there. And so it looks like somebody was doing a training exercise, which is great to see.
And you didn't even have to ask them.
Oh, thank heaven my job's so easy.
That's great. You said something when we chatted yesterday about that, Zeb, which was yeah, when it comes to taking a test count, they can count at any time because those numbers don't mean anything until you make them mean something, until you
Yeah.
submit them to accounting, etc. So I think that's a really good learning tip for everybody. Inventory is one of those things that depending on which side of it you've been on, is such a daunting thing that comes from the top that they need it that I think a lot of people are like, it's almost like when you're handed the white truffle in the kitchen. You're like, oh, I'm not supposed to be touching this because only chef handles the white truffle or whatever. But they're just like, I'm not going to take inventory because that's going to like screw up our whole business if I take the wrong inventory. But until you submit it, it's only in meez. Unless your
Yeah.
accountants live in meez and they literally get the report the second you hit submit, as you said, the numbers don't mean anything. It can just be a great learning. And hey, these count units need to be addressed, or we're showing
Exactly.
$20,000 of bread or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other hacks, tricks, workarounds that you've come up with to make inventory suck less, for lack of a better word?
Uh, um, most of the hacks that we've derived really revolve around unit of count. And I don't know how deep in the weeds we want to get with this, but again, understanding, and this has been the biggest learning curve for myself and my teams using these for inventory. Is understanding unit of count and understanding how to work with it. So I screwed it up at first. Happy to admit that. Each location has screwed it up on their first count, and we've learned our way through it. But making sure that we're counting the way we're going to count things. For example, I guess that's kind of an odd way to put it, but and giving them some training on how to set their count unit relative to how it was purchased, I guess is what I'm driving at.
And just to clarify for everybody, what we're talking about with count units, we're talking about in the inventory system, we have the ingredient, and then we have the count unit, which you're eventually going to use in your live inventory, right? So, what Zeb's kind of referring to is setting these up, because they come in with, a case size, essentially, whatever's on the invoice, but that's not necessarily the easiest way to count something, so I just wanted to kind of preface that. Yeah, if we can take a look at this together, if you want to, Zeb, you want to point out any specifics about the use in the kitchen.
Yeah, I think the one that caused us the most agita at first was tortillas.
Yeah.
Because if you go to corn tortilla 4.5 inch, which on Charles's sheet, I can't remember where it is. I'm sorry.
That's a
Yeah,
that's a but we can kind of, we can.
I could speak to it as an example in the meantime. But if the case is 16 packs at 20. Oh, that's flour, but that's fine. We can use that as an example. I think they were trying to count at first each pack as an each because they look in the case and they say, oh, well, there are 8 of them in there. There are 8 packs and they count it as 8 each. And of course, then the numbers are wrong. And so we had to figure out a system for putting a name to those or a kind of pack unit that made sense. And so that took a little bit of help from y'all, I think would be a good way to put it.
I mean, essentially the idea is instead of having a case equals 16/20 each, meaning, okay, when I count, I'm going to count by the case. why don't we break it up? And this is I found just like a similar one in terms of like
Okay.
hamburger buns or, or English muffins. You create one that's just a bag that's within the case. So the bag equals 12 each, so that now you don't have to count by the case or by the individual English muffin. You count by the pack within the case. And so that's the like one of the biggest tips for sure that we worked on with InTown and Zeb, and I've been working on with a lot of other of our clients too, just to make sure that they know how to do this part so that it's just easy for the team to do, and then also it calculates properly, so you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I always, when I'm training the GMs on meez, I always use salt as an example because they're going to count inventory behind the bar and they see that there's a quart container of kosher salt that they use for rimming glasses. And so they have to add it. It automatically pops up as case equals 9 3-pound boxes. That's not the way we're going to count it. They want to count it as a quart because it's in a quart container. And so we have to stop and have, a conversation about how meez works a little bit on a little bit deeper level and why we should count it by the pound or by the gram instead.
Right. By the gram, that's a tall order.
Well, yeah, it is. But hey, look, when I told all the chefs they had to do all the recipes in grams, they nearly burned me in effigy, but
yet you're still here.
Yet I'm still here.
One thing that we said 2 weeks ago, and I wonder how it holds for you, Zeb, is we were talking about, just what kind of units, what dimensions people are counting in. And we kind of came down to saying that we feel that this is what we see a lot. Proteins, meats, fish tend to get counted by weight because A, that's how you're billed for them, and B, that's the most expensive stuff usually. So you want to know exactly how much you have. Dry storage tends to be where you use more of the defined case packs.
Yeah.
Might be counting things pretty much as a whole case or a half case or a full bag of flour, 50 pounds, etc.
Depends on where it's located, but yeah.
Yeah. And then we talked about how then the inventory on the line, meat drawers or whatever, tends to be counted in volume in, the whatever containers product has been brought up to the line on, whether it's 6 pans or pints and quarts or whatnot. How true would you say that holds?
I think that's relatively true. I think we don't count cold board items. So we use that functionality less, but what we do count are bulk recipe items and bulk proteins that are on the line ready for service, which we generally count by total weight as opposed to by the portion. I find it a little bit more accurate to count those by full weight or by total weight. But I think largely what you're saying is true. To the dry goods example, I mentioned it depends on where it's being kept. So I think salt's a great example. I always come back to salt. It comes in a case of 9 3-pound boxes, and then it gets dispersed to the 4 winds. There's 2 pounds in the prep area, there's 1.5 pounds on the line, there's some behind the bar here. And so those we tend to count less relative to the case pack or the box and break it down into weights, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. Cool.
A lot of good learnings.
Yeah.
And we just keep going
any other questions? Oh, sorry. What's that, Chef?
I said we just keep going deeper and deeper.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Anybody have any specific questions for Chef or for us about inventories, about meez, about life? Just kidding on the life part.
I cannot advise on life.
Same here.
Trust me, you don't want that advice.
yeah, I mean, one of the best takeaways I think from this for me was I think the idea of just keeping it kind of tight in terms of the first initial rollouts. I think I see this the most with customers I bring on, and not just with inventory, but with meez recipes in general. Also, it's really helpful to have ownership in a small group, and then become proficient, become power users, experts, whatever you want to call it, and then the next phase, build it out to bring in the next group and picking those people wisely. I think that's some of the best advice I hope people can get from this, because I do think it's again, it might feel like it's it's a delay and it's taking a long time, and maybe it's too much on only one or two person's like shoulders for a bit, but at the end of the day, it's gonna make your lives a lot easier in the long run, and I think that's the really important part. Inventory is not going away. You're not this isn't a short-term solution. Like it's a process to build it up, but because you're going to hopefully be doing inventory every month for years and years, and that's the goal, right? You want to be able to have a system in place for that. So yeah, that's my big takeaway.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Go ahead.
I was curious if any thoughts for, I mean, we get so many different kinds of customers, whether they're in restaurants, institutional food service, healthcare, etc., clubs like yourself, country clubs. And there are sometimes the conversation comes up of, we're way too busy. We don't even bother taking inventory. There's no point. The stuff comes and it goes. What would your thoughts be to that?
That's crazy talk. I mean, look, who am I to tell anybody how to run their organization? But taking inventory, for us is a required task, not just for the sake of doing it, but I have to understand how all my locations are performing, not just financially, but understanding how they manage their inventory helps me understand how the chefs are doing their jobs and what I can help coach them on. One of the things that I look at, and there's disagreement about the point that I'm about to make, and I'm up for healthy discussion, but I encourage my chefs to try to maintain their inventory at or around the same dollar amount month over month, because I find that extreme fluctuations in inventory equal extreme fluctuations in cost of goods and are typically a signal of some dysfunction in the purchasing process. And so I'm watching their inventory month over month, and when I see wild swings in it, it helps me go back to them and figure out what's going on, figure out if there's something I can coach them on.
Nice. It's more than just numbers.
Yeah.
I was looking at the question.
Yeah. So there's a question about yield. Yield back up the already cut meat. Is there a function in meez to do this and add it to the uncut meat? I think
I know. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what we do, I don't know if this is right or not, but it gets us the right result. For a bulk protein, I'll use salmon as an example. I created a recipe called salmon yield. And that was basically weighing a full side of salmon. Let's say it's 3.5 pounds, trimming it out, getting it portion ready, portioning it, and then weighing the result and expressing that as a percentage of the whole. Or saying, if we started with 3.5 pounds, by the time it was trimmed and portioned, we had 2.8 pounds. And then when we count portion salmon, we don't count salmon, we count salmon yield. And so that includes the yield cost, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, because you've taken the trim, the cut, and now you're each portion
including it,
cost.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cost is already added to the yield. The cost of the trim is already added into that portion. So by inventorying the portion, you're accounting for that cost.
That's correct. That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is possible, if that's AJ asking, and
yeah,
we'll talk soon about that. Cool. Well, yeah, I think we're hitting pretty close to time. So Zeb, really, really thank you so much for taking time out of your day. And you're in a crazy time of opening up a new location. So
nothing but crazy time. So
yeah, fair enough. But yeah, still can't thank you enough for taking the time. It's really it's a pleasure having you and hearing from you. And yeah, super. Yeah, can't thank you enough. So
awesome. Thanks
for
having
everybody
me
on the call.
We'll
be sending the recording and the follow-up email, and I'll stop interrupting Zeb now.
Oh, not at all. I was just thanking you for having me, and I hope it was of some use.
Oh,
Totally. Always. Thank you so much, Chef. And yeah, for anybody else on the call, follow up with us. Doug will be on office hours tomorrow if you have follow-up questions or anything that you saw on today. That'll be from 2 to 3 p.m. East Coast time. And then as normal, we skip Thursdays. We'll be back on Friday. And we have another one of these webinars coming up 2 weeks from today.
right.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all. Thanks again,
you.
Chef.
All right, y'all. Thanks so much.
All right, everyone. Cheers.